Hello, Falcoholics. What is up? Welcome to episode 289 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, joined by my co-host. He is Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way on the X, Twitter, whatever. Uh, and, we're going to save the Twitter is taking X to the next level, according to some recent news reports about the platform. But we're going to save that for a very special episode in the Dead Zone in a couple of weeks. But other than that, revelation, Adnan, how are you doing?
Maybe we should take the Falcoholic to the same level as Twitter.
We've talked
Um,
about it. I mean, the fans have been clamoring for the Dave Choate OnlyFans. So, I mean,
hey, our revenues would go through the roof at that point.
it's true. We'll see how desperate we get. It is the dead zone after all. So, we just have to have Dave take one for the team. But, guys, welcome in. We're back from a brief hiatus. Was able to take a mini vacay there, which was nice. Went down to the Pennsylvania area. Got some good brews from some local bars down there. So good stuff there. Not anything you've been getting up to over the past week?
Um, Honestly, not really. Like it's just gotten a lot hotter. It's gotten a
Yeah,
lot. I mean, it's not terrible. It's just been raining a lot, so it's gotten a lot muggier here in Atlanta, a lot more humid.
yeah.
So I mean, I'll be taking my own vacation in about a month, but until then, it's just dealing with the mugginess a little bit down here, and everyone who's in Atlanta knows what I'm talking about. It's just been raining nonstop lately.
Yeah, well, you're not in the area that lost water, right? Because I had ESPN's. I recorded a podcast with ESPN's Mark Ramundi, uh, this morning, and he is still under a boil warning. But I think you're not necessarily in downtown, so you might be okay.
Yes, correct. Yeah, downtown is I don't even know how the fuck that happens, but yeah, downtown is they lost a lot of water. They're in a boil warning. I'm thankfully outside of that region. So, hopefully they figure it out very soon.
I hope so. But guys, we are going to be bringing you the second. Well, I guess it's like the second two-thirds of our Falcons 2024 season predictions. We'll have Eric Robinson joining us shortly once he's finished up with his work. ESPN's just got him working late. He's just big timing us as usual. Eric, is flaunting his ESPN status all over the place, but he'll be popping in when he's ready, and then we'll get started on that. In the meantime, we'll bring you guys some little OTA tidbits, little OTA nuggets. Like I said, I have a full podcast with Mark Ramundi coming out on Friday where we talked about his early look at OTAs and how he's adjusting to Atlanta. He is without water, like I said, so he's getting baptized by fire in the Atlanta heat with very little water. So he's good for him. He's a New York guy, so I was like, oh, you switched places with me. I went up and you went down. So definitely look forward to that on Friday. Before we get into the OTA takes, guys, let me bring you a real quick word from our sponsor, betonline.ag. Folks, betonline is your number one source for the NBA Finals, for the Stanley Cup Finals this season. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. You can find it all there on BetOnline. And when the game's over, you can head on over to their online casino. You can get in on a game of blackjack, game of poker, unwind with one of their over 150 online slots games. So what are you waiting for, folks? Head to that website today, betonline.ag, to get in on the action. Just remember, when you sign up, to use our promo code. That promo code is BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. Well, Adnan, I don't know if you've been following the OTA little nuggets that we got coming out, but I know the big one, obviously, is that AJ Terrell and Bijan Robinson are back on the field, which is obviously good news. They were back a week earlier than was anticipated, Bijan coming off a injury he suffered towards the end of last season that he played through for the most part, and Terrell had hamstring tightness, so they held him out as a precaution. So great to see those guys back out there, because if there's anything that's important at this time of year, it's keeping guys healthy. So it's definitely good to see those guys back out there.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like even if they weren't out there, it's June. Like I feel like Nothing matters too much. We shouldn't be saying this because
It matters so much.
obviously we want to drive the content. We want what we want to drive the conversation. We want to drive the clicks, but uh, up until like pads come on during training camp in like August, nothing really matters too much. All they're doing is they're out there in shorts. They're out there uh, going through the motions a little bit, meeting the teammates. The good part about the guys being together right now is being around each other a little bit, especially for the Falcons with Kirk Cousins uh, being the new quarterback. Now, apparently, he's taking the offensive line to Outback Steakhouse or wherever he said in his interview. So it's really cool that they're bonding, and it's very important for team chemistry. But on the field, let's be honest, how much does it really matter right now? But it's still very good that the injuries aren't a big deal and that they're already out there in early June.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's maybe like slightly more important because like this is a new offense, this is a new quarterback. So like getting these like reps on air is kind of the first step to building chemistry. So perhaps it's maybe a little bit more meaningful. At least that's what we're going to say. We're going to hype it up as much as we can, of course. These beautiful routes on air, these beautiful, circus catches against no defenders. Sometimes defenders, but just no pass rush. But yeah, it's been great to see those guys. And speaking of quarterbacks, Kirk Cousins participating more or less fully in OTAs. I guess we wouldn't. It's not clear if he would be cleared to do any sort of contact related stuff. Now, typically you're not hitting your quarterback in training camp ever, but even then, like full pads, contact type stuff, would he be cleared for that? I don't know, maybe not, but he is out there. He's participated in basically everything, and I think that maybe is a little bit earlier than some were anticipating, that Cousins would be able to participate in the entire offseason program despite an Achilles injury less than a year ago. So, I mean, is that a good sign to you that he's out there doing as much as they're doing, at OTAs?
Yeah, I mean, of course, him being out there right now is a really good sign for him being ready for camp, for full contact, quote unquote, because like you said, how much is it really full contact for quarterbacks? But that leads me and everyone to believe that yeah, he's going to probably be out there week 1 with no restrictions, which is the goal. Um, he didn't get hurt early last season. It was more so toward mid-season, but even though it's an Achilles injury, an Achilles injury today isn't even as crucial as it was even a decade ago or 15 years ago. Um, Medicine has advanced so much, science has advanced so much. These guys have the top doctors in the world when it comes to rehab, the top rehab programs in the world. So I have no doubt that it's a really good sign that it's June and Kirk Cousins is out there. He wants to be out there. It seems like he's been itching to be out there on the field after he was robbed by injury last season, in what was honestly one of his best seasons of his career, arguably the best season of his career up to that point last season. He was really putting together a Pro Bowl year. If you look at the stats, if you look at the numbers. So yeah, it's great. It's great. I'm thrilled to see Kirk Cousins out there. I'm very happy that he seems so locked in and he seems so eager to be out there with the team. So yeah, it's fantastic news. The only thing I'm worried about is that tampering charge is gonna hit in the next couple days, according to Adam Schefter's reports. So we'll see. We'll see what exactly the Falcons are penalized with here in the coming days, probably.
Yeah, it couldn't drop right before this show or anything like that. Yes, they couldn't do anything to help us out there,
They
but
can't
yeah,
just that favor. No,
no,
no way.
they never would. It's probably going to come out like Friday at like 4 p.m. Like their usual news drop time to make sure no one could do a lot of content for it over the weekend. But whatever. And I guess I could record a show on the weekend, but you guys want me to record shows on the weekend in the off season? I mean, come on. I'm just kidding. If breaking news comes out, I probably will record something. But because we don't have a lot of breaking news, so anything we get, really, we got to latch onto and really hype up. But hopefully the penalty will be minor. But right now, Falcons, the two guys that really aren't participating much. Grady Jarrett is not participating at all. He's continuing to rehab his injury. David Onyemata, I guess, has been out there sometimes, but not all the time. So he is dealing with something. We're not exactly sure what. It may just be veteran rest. They don't necessarily need him out there for OTAs. So we'll see how those two develop in terms of their health. But at this stage, nothing long term in terms of concerns. I think they're expecting Grady back for mandatory minicamp, which would be next week. So if he's back for that, that would obviously be a good sign, and we could all sort of relax on that. But yeah, the other little tidbits to talk about, I know Daniel Flick was reporting that Clark Phillips III seems to be the favorite for cornerback 2. That's probably going to be the most closely watched of all of the training camp battles this summer. And I don't know who was your favorite. Was Clark Phillips your favorite? I don't even know if we've talked about it yet, but
We haven't really talked about it, but it probably would be Clark Phillips, just given the fact that they haven't really added. Well, not that they haven't added anyone. No disrespect to Kevin King.
Antonio Hamilton,
Yeah,
erasure.
Antonio
Yeah.
yeah, they added those guys, but those aren't exactly high profile. Those are all guys who are, I'm sure Hamilton will make the team, but those are guys that are going to be fighting for their spots on the roster. The team didn't really draft anyone. They didn't, sign anyone more high profile. So, I mean, it shows that they, do believe in their internal growth. And Clark Phillips took over that number 2 spot from Okuda last year during the regular season. I would assume it will be between him, Mike Hughes, and D. Alford at this point. And, I don't feel amazing about the depth there, but I would say that this probably will be Clark Phillips, having the first crack at this come week 1, just, given the fact of where the depth chart was at the end of the season and, given the fact that they do believe in that continuity, that internal growth for him going into year 2. So, yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised to see Clark Phillips lined up opposite of AJ Terrell come week 1.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I guess I feel kind of a little bit of the opposite, where I feel actually pretty good about the depth that they've assembled, right? I feel like Antonio Hamilton, Mike Hughes, who that was another tidbit that Mark shared, was that Mike Hughes has been playing a lot outside, which thank you, because it means D. Alford is going to be the slot starter. But like, Mike Hughes had his best NFL season playing outside for the Chiefs, so I don't know why more teams aren't giving him an opportunity to play outside. So I do feel better about Mike Hughes if he's playing outside, certainly. But like, I feel like you got Antonio Hamilton, who not a plus starter, but a solid one, which is great for depth. You got Mike Hughes, who wasn't so great in the slot, but maybe he could be better outside. I mean, he was certainly a plus starter that 1 year with the Chiefs, so if he could be an average starter, maybe that would be nice. But yeah, I'm curious to see how the rest of it shakes out. I think they really just need that second, starter that you feel confident in. I mean, it could be like by the time the preseason is over and we've seen Clark Phillips take control of the role and all this stuff, and he looks great, then it's like, okay, nobody cares. But it's like, at this point, it's like, I'd really like to see, we've talked about Kello Witherspoon to death, but Witherspoon, Steven Nelson, another established starter, just to sort of fill out the depth chart. I think because that's one of the things that they're missing. So, we'll see how that develops, obviously. But yeah, how the corner room shakes out is going to be one of the most interesting things to discuss, along with, who starts opposite Jesse Bates. I mean, it seems like Richie Grant is in favor with this coaching staff. Maybe contract year, Richie Grant, it could happen, right? We've seen guys in contract years perform well before. So
if you told me at the end of last season we would be going into, probably camp next year with Richie Grant starting at safety and, the cornerback room being largely unchanged, I wouldn't feel great about it.
That's how I feel right now. Yeah. I mean, they seem to have an enormous amount of confidence in their ability to coach these guys up. So okay, sure. Let's see how it goes, right? Let's see how that works out. But mildly concerning, I guess I would say. But other than that, not too bad. But um, we have heard.
Let's hope
Oh yeah,
for a very healthy season for AJ
yes.
Terrell.
There you go. That's the other side of that
Very
coin.
healthy.
Yeah, it's the other side of that coin. So we're certainly hoping for health for everyone, especially AJ Terrell. But yeah, I mean, on the offensive side of the ball, it's nice to get Bijan back out there. I know someone in the chat mentioned that Jason McClellan is still not practicing. He had a pre-draft injury, and I think it was not expected that he would be available until training camp for the most part. So, you know, I'm not concerned about Jason McClellan not being out there. It's not a new development. It was a pre-draft injury. So hopefully he hasn't like aggravated anything. But as far as I know, he hasn't participated in anything. So I don't know where he would have aggravated it. I guess theoretically you could do that in rehab. But yeah, at this stage, he's the other guy that's not practicing. But what we have seen is a lot of nice work by the wide receivers. And again, you know, we're continuing to see sort of this slow drumbeat building for Casey Washington. And we're getting the dreaded, like, oh, Casey Washington is this year's Puka Nacua. Please don't do that. Like, don't set yourself up for that because it's not going to happen. There's like a 1% chance that Casey Washington ever has a season as good as Puka Nacua's season last year. There's like a 1% chance for every, like, I mean, a lot of these first round picks won't have a season like that in their career. So, like, just, you know, maybe calm down.
1,500 yards.
Yes. So, plenty of receivers will never have like, I don't think Calvin Ridley had that many yards ever. He was close. I think he had 1,300 something. But
he had more touchdowns.
Yeah, he did. He did.
You know, around as many yards during.
It was close.
2019.
Yeah, I think he had almost 1,400 that year.
Or was it the COVID season? Or no. It was 2020. That was the COVID season where he like really went off.
Yeah, he had that one year that he just totally crushed it.
But I mean, yeah, it's like Puka Nacua was, he was nuts last year, and you know, in fairness to Puka, like I think his drop stock was where it was because I think he dealt with some injuries in college, so he sort of slid down the draft board, and then you know he went to a perfect spot in LA. And I know the Falcons have the Rams offensive coordinator, but it's going to mostly be Drake London in that top wide receiver role, not Casey Washington. So
yeah,
you know, you're right. It's not fair to put any sort of expectation close to that on any rookie wide receiver, even one that was taken, you know, in the first round, let alone someone who was taken on day 3, on late day 3.
Yeah, I mean, even like Marvin Harrison Jr. having that type of season would be pretty unlikely because I mean we're talking about like that's the best rookie season we've ever seen for a wide receiver. So, like just pump the brakes on the Puka thing. Do I think Casey Washington could potentially break the top 4 wide receivers on this team before training camp is out? I mean, maybe. I think there's certainly an opportunity for him to do that. It's not behind, I think, the top 3 of, you know, Drake and Darnell Mooney and Rondale Moore. It's pretty unsettled. You know,
I think Kadarius Hodge is going to make the team off special teams. And then after that, the Falcons don't really have much in the wide receiver room.
Right, like so, Ray McLeod, you think is probably going to stick around as a returner.
It'll be a fierce battle between him and Avery Williams.
Yeah. I think they'll both make it, just because I think they want insurance if one of them gets hurt, so they're not in last year's situation again. But
yeah, so it's like, you know, at that point, I feel like if you're Casey Washington, you should be happy that he was drafted by the Falcons because the opportunity is, the door is very ajar for him to make this roster, especially given the fact that he's already on the field. You know, he's learning the playbook. He's getting to know Kirk Cousins. He's getting to know the rest of this offense. I'm sure the team will sign more camp bodies, more wide receivers, and he already sort of has that leg up between, you know, being out there in OTAs and the fact that he was drafted by this regime. And, you know, no one ever wants to cut anyone they drafted. So yeah, Casey Washington, I think as of right now, I think he will make the 53, and at the very least, he'll be on the practice squad at the very minimum.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those things where we'll have to see how the other, UDFA receivers go. But considering like the Falcons didn't take an early wide receiver, so the opportunity for Casey Washington is enormous because we were all expecting them to take like a day 2 wide receiver, then there wouldn't really be room unless the Falcons were planning to cut Hodge or Ray McLeod. At this stage, it's like he's got to beat out the couple of veteran guys they have. They brought in Austin Mack from the CFL. Fontenot has a pretty good track record with the CFL players. They also brought, Chris Blair is back, Josh Ali's back. They also have, some UDFA guys. I know they just cut Jaquay Jackson, so that's maybe one less competitor there. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see how this receiver room shakes out. They're clearly going for the wide receiver talent over blocking ability, which has not been the case the last several years. So we should get at least a little bit more from this wide receiver room, given just the nature of the offense and that it's likely to be, if you guys haven't seen the episode I did last week, breaking down how the offense is going to change, they're going to play 3 receivers, and they're probably going to play the same 3 receivers almost every down. And they may have a 4th guy that subs in sometimes. That's what the Rams did with Cooper Kupp, with Puka Nacua, and with Tutu Atwell. Now, and then Demarcus Robinson was the 4th guy when eventually Demarcus Robinson sort of supplanted Tutu Atwell and took over that job. But it was those 4 guys that played, and nobody else really played. So, whoever the 4th receiver is for the Falcons is the one that's going to get some snaps, and the other ones probably won't outside of special teams and injuries. So that's the job to watch. And, I guess my money would probably be on like Kadero Hodge because he's got that inside-outside flexibility. He is going to be active because of special teams. And I think he showed like he's a capable wide receiver. I mean, he's not necessarily a needle mover, but as your like 4th receiver, I think he's clearly good enough to do that. So.
I mean, yeah, we'll see. We'll see come camp. Like the wide receiver battle is always one of the more exciting ones. It's exciting for the sickos like us who are, really cruising down that depth chart and down those final few spots of the 53-man roster. Last year was super fun just because every day it seemed like it was a new player that was, showing out or taking the lead. I know Josh Ali had that wonderful day against the Dolphins during those joint practices. Penny Hart was in it until the very end. Frank Darby was in it until he suffered that concussion. So yeah, it's always a fun time during camp tracking that wide receiver 5/6 battle, even though most people couldn't care less about it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was good for us. I enjoyed it. Unfortunately, I didn't enjoy the actual wide receiver production on the field after that battle very much. But the battle in training camp was fun. But yeah, and Joe Schmo in the chat brings up a good point. And I was going to touch on this too. I forgot to mention it during our sort of Puka Nacua sidebar. But if you're looking for like the Puka Nacua of this offense, I don't think it's going to be a wide receiver at all. I think it's Kyle Pitts because I think you're going to see Kyle Pitts play in the slot and he's going to play outside just like Puka. Puka played slightly more outside than in the slot, but overall was very versatile. And I think that's what the Falcons are going to do with Kyle Pitts. Just sort of throw him out there and move him around where he gets the best matchups and go from there. And they'll move Darnell Mooney. We know can play both slot and outside, as can Drake London. So we're gonna see. Hopefully, these guys do some interesting stuff with those rotations. And I think it's also a clue because of how much money they gave Charlie Werner. I don't think they're paying Charlie Werner that money for him to barely play tight end. I think that's pretty clear that they want him to be their blocking tight end. So we'll see. How it develops, but it's going to be fascinating to watch because it seems like they're very interested in Rondale Moore too, and where does he factor in? He's got that versatility too, so it's going to be interesting to see this probably how they align all these receivers, how these guys develop, where they're playing Kyle Pitts. All these are very fascinating storylines to track as we get closer to real football. In OTAs, there's only so much you can glean. They're not really showing much either, so. Yes. Well, we're still waiting on Eric. I know he's going to get in as quickly as he can. We may want to go ahead and start our predictions on so we're not here forever. Dave, as you guys can notice, Dave is also out sick. So I have Dave's predictions. He sent them to me, so I can go over his as well. But let's go ahead and get started with Week 6 against the Panthers. It's at the Panthers because I think this one, not a whole lot to discuss here. I think we're probably all going to pick dubs here, but Adnan, you could surprise us. I'm not going to speak for Eric. We'll get his take, but I think this one is probably one of the easier ones that we have to discuss tonight.
Yeah, this should be a win. I get, like, you never want to take for granted a road divisional matchup. The Falcons lost to the Panthers last year on the road. I think we were one of 2 wins in Carolina. Now, in fairness, that did involve Desmond Ridder throwing one of the worst interceptions I've ever seen, and it's kind of fitting that was his last. Well, that wasn't his last pass as a Falcon, but we thought it was at the time because he got benched for Heineke after that. But yeah, this should be a relatively easy one. On top of that, the Falcons have 3 extra days of rest too. They're coming off a Thursday nighter against Tampa Bay to end what will be a 3-game homestand, and then they just drive up 85, 3.5 hours to Charlotte. I'm kidding. They're probably going to fly. But they go up 85 to Charlotte. So this is going to be a period of five straight games where it's either Charlotte or Atlanta, and then a 6th one in Tampa Bay. So they'll stay in the region from September 22nd through November 10th, up until they have to go to New Orleans. But yeah, this should be a blowout victory. Like, the Falcons should not be losing to the Panthers, like, even away from home. If they do, then we have some questions to ask.
Yeah, and I know Nico's saying don't estimate Canales, and I look, we have to give Canales absolute credit for how he basically resurrected Baker Mayfield's career, and I mean, he did some good things with that Tampa offense, but he also had weaknesses. Like, the Tampa Bay run game was the worst in the NFL, behind a good offensive line too. So it's not like Tampa Bay was in this terrible place. I mean, Rachaad White is a decent running back. It's just he doesn't really call a run game, so that tends to make your offense one-dimensional. He is a QB whisperer, so he's probably going to help out Bryce Young, probably going to help out that passing game. Obviously, I like bringing in Deontay Johnson. I think that's a great security blanket for Bryce Young. I think their offense will be better, but he's also a first-time head coach who only had 1 season as an offensive coordinator, so I think it's just like a monumental leap in responsibility for him. Now he does get to keep some of the staff intact. Like, I think Ejiro Evero stayed on, so the defensive staff is going to be intact. But they traded away Brian Burns. They're just not going to be the same defensively, losing an asset like that. The team just didn't get that much better. I think they definitely solidified the interior of their offensive line. I think they added another interesting weapon for Bryce Young. I think the Xavier Legette pick was a strange one because it's like, we have Jonathan Mingo at home. Like, I think they just drafted Jonathan Mingo again. It's kind of weird because I think Legette is probably going to need time, just like Jonathan Mingo did. And maybe Mingo takes a step this year and Legette is the one that's sort of developing. But I think the Panthers are at least a year or 2 away from really taking major strides. I don't think they're going to win 2 games again. I think they'll probably get to 4 or 5. But, I think expecting Canales to like turn that thing around as a first-time head coach and only 2nd year as an offensive coordinator, I think that's a big ask for him. So I probably would caution people to not put too much on him. And also, like, I think we all kind of really liked the Panthers coaching staff last year, the coaching staff they put together, and it was like, wow, they're actually building kind of a good coaching staff. That's interesting. And then they fired them after like 8 games. So like, never forget how bad the ownership is in Carolina, and like how big of a problem that could be, like how impatient that owner is. So yeah, Joe, they do have Derek Brown. That's always going to be an issue, but to Cousins' credit, he's really good at getting into the football. So hopefully they'll be able to navigate Derek Brown destroying the interior better than they did under Arthur Smith. But let's move on to week 7. I think this one's a bit more interesting in terms of projections. The Falcons are back at home against the Seahawks, who I think are kind of in a similar boat to the Falcons. They're one of those playoff hopeful teams that are hoping that they can make a few changes and get back to the playoffs. Obviously, the Seahawks have a big change in terms of their coaching at the top. But yeah, I'm curious where you stand on this one, Don, because I think this might be one of the ones that we finally disagree on, because I think we all had the same top 6 picks, more than likely. We'll see what Eric says. But
I think at this point where the team is what, 3,
4-2,
4-2, and 4-2, and that's 3 straight wins if they're going by what we're saying. So, it'll be a very fun October in that case.
That'd be a nice change.
So Seattle is interesting because, like you said, this one's really hard to predict because Seattle's one of those teams that has had so much continuity with their head coach. I think other than Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll was the longest tenured head coach in the NFL, and now both he and Bill are no longer coaches, and it's sort of really it's going to be really weird to see Seattle without Pete Carroll chewing his gum on the sidelines. So the Falcons are at an advantage when it comes to the time zone here. And as much as people sort of want to, downplay some of the schedule stuff, I do think it matters. I think it legitimately does matter of, a team going from West Coast to East Coast, or, having to, having a few days extra coming off a Thursday night game. But, that West Coast, East Coast advantage is mitigated by the fact that Seattle is coming off a Thursday night game against San Francisco the week before. I don't know how Geno Smith is going to look. I do think that he will regress a little bit, but I'm actually picking this one as a loss. Just because I think the Falcons are going to have a really, really difficult time containing those playmakers up in Seattle. They have DK Metcalf, of course, but they have a really strong wide receiver trio. They took Jackson Smith and Jigba last year in the first round. He's probably gonna have a bigger role in that offense this year. Tyler Lockett is still there. He is one of those very underrated veterans that nobody really talks about much anymore, but he can still very much get the job done. I just don't think the Falcons have the horses in the secondary to keep up with that wide receiver trio. And then you have Kenneth Walker, who's one of the most underrated running backs in the league as well. And then they have some really good players on defense as well. Leonard Williams, Boy Mafe. I think this is going to be one of those where, it's going to be one of those frustrating losses at home where the team is coming off of a couple of really good divisional victories. And then, at home, they lose to a team where there's really no shame in losing to them. But it's going to be one where you really want to win because you never know about, wild card tiebreakers or, late season standings. And I think this will be one of those frustrating home losses.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I think this is a game the Falcons will be favored in week 7, that they will end up losing. Frustratingly, for all the reasons you mentioned, I agree with. I mean, I think they should win this game, but I'm not sure that they will, and we'll have to see if they do. But they're not going to win all their winnable games. That's just the way this goes. And then we have Dave predicting actually a win against the Seahawks this week. So Dave now has the Falcons winning more games than Adnan and I. So I guess we're officially haters now. Yep. So Dave has the Falcons with 5 wins and 2 losses through week 7, and Adnan and I have the Falcons at 4-3. And we'll get Eric's take whenever he's got it. And then we'll move on to week 8, where the Falcons are now on the road at the Bucs. And yeah, I think I have this one as a loss just because I think they're probably going to split with the Bucs and the Saints more than likely. I know you can never predict that, so I understand. But, I think being realistic, they're probably going to split with the Bucs and the Saints and sweep the Panthers. That's sort of my thought there. Spoiler alert for the other games, but I think that this is one that, again, like, the Falcons probably should win and may even be favored, and even though it's on the road. But it's just one of those frustrating losses where you play a divisional opponent on the road, and it's just a tough game. It's always a tough game. So that's where my head's at. I think Dave has this one as a loss as well. Where are you sitting with this Week 8 game?
I have a win. So this will be our first disagreement,
Mm-hmm.
and I just Tampa Bay just doesn't do it for me. Like I know it. I respect the fact that they've won this division back-to-back years. I respect the fact that they came very close to being in the NFC Championship game last year. Like they beat the Eagles, they almost beat the Lions. I just have a really hard time imagining Baker Mayfield not regressing this season. And I talked about it last show. I have all the respect in the world for Mike Evans. I think he will be a Hall of Famer one day. Um, but yeah, we mentioned Dave Canales a little while ago. Them losing him it's not going to be a small thing. I do think that it's going to be very bad for their passing game losing Dave Canales. And then I just can't help but think about last season, the fact that the Falcons should have swept the Bucks really easily, actually. Despite the fact that this team was starting Desmond Ritter, despite the fact that Bijan Robinson got one carry in that game in Tampa, despite the fact that Ritter fumbled 3 times in Tampa, and then Younghoe Koo missed multiple kicks at home in Atlanta, and then they never reviewed that Rashad White fumble, not fumble. The Falcons should have very easily swept this team last year, and the Falcons are much I want to say a better team this year, and I think the Bucks will regress this year. And I can easily see the Falcons sweeping the series this year.
Yeah, that I don't disagree. I mean, I feel bad because last year I expected the Bucks to just be dog doo doo, and they actually weren't dog doo doo. They were better than that. Obviously, they were better than the Falcons. So, I did want to put a little respect on them, and just divisional games are tough, but it wouldn't shock me either. Like I think if the Falcons perform better, we're flip. I'm trying to inject some of that season randomness into these predictions. Like we're gonna lose some games that we probably should win, and so on, and we might win some games that we probably should lose. We'll see. But yeah, I don't disagree with your take there, and I think there could be a situation where they do win some of these games, and then they're flying. At this point in the season. But I think right now that's sort of my head's at. So we'll move on to Week 9 against the Cowboys, where
ideally we're doing what Dave is saying, and this team is on a 5-game winning streak.
Yeah.
And we're just we're just looking to take on all comers at this point. And
right,
we're
that would be nice.
We're like, you know what? The sky's the limit, and what day does the NFC title game? Because we're gonna have Mercedes-Benz open, all the way to the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
there we go.
But,
Let's do it.
It doesn't really work out that way.
Yeah, no, I'd be down for that, for the record, but yeah, it doesn't always work that way, sadly.
Let the record show we want the Falcons to win a lot of games.
Yes, absolutely we do. But speaking of this Cowboys game, what are you thinking in Week 9?
So what record do I have right now? I'm at 5-3.
Yes.
You're at 4-4, and
Mhm.
Dave is at 6-2.
Yep.
Man, look at Dave, 6-2.
Oh wait, I think Dave actually had a loss for the Bucks, so he's
did
at.
he have a loss? All right,
Yeah.
so me and Dave are at 5-3.
Yeah.
5-3.
Yep.
Yeah, the Cowboys. This one I have as a loss, as a defeat. I think the Cowboys are a really good football team. I know, they got really, they got plastered in the playoffs last year, and it's always really funny to make fun of the Cowboys. And it's just one of those It's one of those things where, historically, we know about the fan base. We know that they have not been to an NFC title game in many, many years. I think it's been a few decades at this point, but they've still put together a hell of a football team over there. I've been seeing Dak Prescott's praises for many years at this point. I think the Falcons in 2020. I still remember. I think it was the 2020 COVID season where the Falcons lost to Seattle, and I made a comment about how I thought that Dak was, as good, if not maybe even better than Russell Wilson. And I remember a bunch of Seahawks fans just coming after me for that. And, it turns out that, from then on, I think Dak ended up being much better than Wilson. But, that's neither here nor there. But I think Dak Prescott is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC, even though he doesn't really show up much for the playoffs or hasn't the past few years. CD Lamb, we'll see what happens with him in that new contract, but I think they will take care of him by training camp. We'll see if he makes more than Justin Jefferson or not. I don't think he's better than Justin Jefferson, personally, but we'll see what his agent and Jerry Jones come to terms on. But I don't think the Falcons have anyone on this roster that can keep up with CD Lamb. Their running game is the corpse of Ezekiel Elliott, so that won't be as scary. But we've seen the Cowboys have success even going one dimensional in the past. Like last year, their running game wasn't very good either. Tony Pollard sucked last season.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's true.
yeah, their O line is still, it's not the O line of like 2016 when they were the top record in the NFC, but it's still solid. Their defense still has some serious playmakers. Michael Parsons is there, of course. Trayvon Diggs is coming off an injury, but he should be 100% by this point. DeMarcus Lawrence obviously is very good. Sure, Dan Quinn is not there anymore, but they still have some serious playmakers. I think this will be a defeat by like 10 points, honestly. Like I don't think the Falcons really have the forces to keep up with Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to have this one as a loss as well. I don't think Dallas will be as good this year, so I think at home, if the Falcons are sort of overperforming our expectations, at least reasonable expectations, then this is another one that could be a win. But I'm going to have this one as a loss. And I think Dave also had it as a loss. So this will be our first consensus loss here in week 9.
Also, and let's be honest here, it's a home game, but there's going to be plenty of Cowboys fans in the stands for this one, especially if the Falcons are. Well, actually, let me take that back. If the Falcons are winning the way that we think they will be, then the Bens will be packed out with fans, but the Cowboys fans will still always make their presence felt.
Yeah.
So that's just sort of the nature of the beast. They're not exactly one of those legacy teams, but at this point, I think they've become one of those legacy teams. Just like a Steelers or a Packers, where their fans are going to be everywhere.
Yeah, that's true. It's they are the number one largest fan base in the country for a reason, right? I mean, they show up everywhere, and they are everywhere. It's just one of those things. So, all right. So we got 3 L's for this one. Moving on to week 10 at the Saints. Dave is a massive hater, just like me, so he picked this one as a loss. And I know, Adnan, you're gonna take a giant dub here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually incredibly disappointed in both of you for picking a loss.
I'm disappointed in myself. Yeah, I am.
That's absolutely blasphemous to me. This is the year where we, finally fucking sweep these guys.
I would love that, for the record. This is like a jinx. Yeah.
I don't think we've swept the Saints since 2016. Yeah, it's the Saints have owned the series in recent years, especially, and it's gotten to the point where the series is now tied all time, which is absolutely disgraceful given the fact that the Falcons were well ahead, comfortably ahead up until the mid 2000s. But yeah, I have I can never pick the Falcons to lose to the Saints. But at the same time, it's still, I'm not really shaking my boots thinking about going up against Derek Carr. Dennis Allen is still there, thanks in part to the Falcons getting plastered by the Saints last year in that season finale. I think that gave Saints ownership and Mickey Loomis just that push that they needed to keep Dennis Allen, which I think we were all happy about. Um, Chris Olave is very, very good, but then beyond him, that wide receiver room is sort of lacking a little bit. No disrespect to Rashid Shaheed, no disrespect to their tight end room and Jawan Johnson. Alvin Kamara is not the Alvin Kamara of a few years ago. Um, this team is just also like very old
Yes,
at
they're the
this
oldest
point.
roster in the NFL. Yeah.
They seem a bit more run down, and that's sort of that age and that sort of lack of improvement over the years. That is the consequence of their salary cap hell. I know that Saints fans love to pretend like there's no consequences for kicking the can down the road year after year, but they're seeing it in real time of you know you have an aging roster that you cannot revamp or an aging player that you cannot get rid of if you just keep doing what they've done. And now they're in this, perpetual cycle of having to continue to restructure these guys year in and year out. And yeah, I'm just not scared of the Saints at all. Like this isn't the Sean Payton, Drew Brees, New Orleans team that just sort of terrorized the Falcons in years past. And I know that they've terrorized the Falcons over the past few years, but that's not because they've been good. That's just been because Arthur Smith and the Falcons and the end of the Dan Quinn era Falcons have been buried ass. And I think now that the Falcons are actually better, and now that they have an actual quarterback, it's time to start shifting that. It's time to start shifting the series back into our favor, and it's time to start kicking New Orleans' ass, the way that we did back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, I would love that for the record. I do think the Saints are probably going to be. I think there's a chance the Saints finish fourth in this division. I think this could be the collapse year that we've been preying on the Saints collapse for many years, and they've avoided collapsing entirely. They've just been extremely mediocre, which I guess is better than the Falcons some of these years. But I think this is the year where they could collapse, and a lot of that will be because of the offensive line. I mean, they got Talisi Fuaga, that's great, but who's playing left tackle for this team? Their guard depth is a big issue. Like they don't have a starting left guard, they don't have a starting left tackle at this stage. I mean, is it going to be Trevor Penning? Like, they're in a bad way on the offensive line, and I think that's one thing that Derek Carr just can't handle is getting the pressure all over him. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen this year. So I think this offense could fall off a cliff. And I know I was reading a tweet from Hayden Winks talking about team scoring projections according to Vegas. And the Saints were one of the 4 teams to have a more than 50-point drop in projected scoring from the previous year. The Falcons, on the other hand, are projected for an almost 100-point jump. They're the second biggest jump behind only the Jets, which obviously Aaron Rodgers coming in, that makes sense. But yeah, so I would love basically for everything Adnan said about the Saints to be true and for the Falcons to come away with a big dub here. But Eric, welcome in. How are you doing, my friend?
I think Eric is on mute.
I am doing well. My apologies for my excessive tardiness. Work kind of sort of got in the way.
It's okay.
Yeah, here we are.
It's all good. All good, my friend. So we've just been sort of going, but we'll give you a lightning round here to take us through your picks for we were just talking about the Saints in week 10. So if you want to take us through, I think week 6 through 10, and we'll get all caught up.
Okay. Week 6, where we're starting.
At the Panthers.
You have a loss to the Panthers, right, Eric?
Oh, man. I hope not, to be quite honest with you. It definitely won't be the first meeting of the season, in my opinion. This is definitely a win for the Falcons. I think, at least I will hope from a fan perspective, they take the field with that bad taste still in their mouth from the last time they played Carolina in this particular situation here, and they get a win, a convincing win at that. So I'm definitely taking the Falcons here.
Nice. And then next we've got at the Bucks we've got the Seahawks in week 7 at home. That's a tough one. That's where we had our first
It is.
disagreements. Yeah.
It is. This is a tricky one because I do think the Seahawks. I don't want to say they're I don't want to say they're a contending team, but I would not be surprised if when as the season unfolds, they win 10 games and they find themselves in the playoffs this year. I'm going, man, I'm going Seattle with this one. I think Seattle. I really like their structure. I get the whole Geno Smith thing and how a lot of people feel about Geno still being their long-term starter or whatever. But I really like, adding Mike McDonald gives them a different dynamic. I love the combination of DK Metcalf and JSN. I think Byron Murphy was an underrated pick. I'm gonna give Seattle the win here.
Okay, so that makes Dave the lone dub here in week 7.
Gotcha,
the rest of us are all haters. So yeah,
Gotcha.
next up, yeah, we're all haters officially. So week 8 at the Bucks is the next one.
Man, it's funny the way it played out last year. I thought it was going to be the complete opposite. I thought last year they were going to lose at Tampa and win at home against the Bucks, but it was vice versa last year. This year, I'm gonna get the win. I'm gonna take the road win here. I think they bounce back after Seattle. I think they beat the Bucks this year. I do think they split, so you can go ahead and give them an L with the home matchup against.
Well,
the Bucks.
you already took a dub in week 5, so
I did.
I think you want the sweep. Then it seems like you want the sweep.
I want to.
Come on, Eric, take the sweep.
But I also know in the back of my mind it's not going to happen.
Well, I mean, Dave and I were big haters on this one, so you don't have to be the hater. You can take the sweep if you want. It's okay.
You know what? Damn it! I'll take the dub. I'll take the sweep.
Okay, big dubs. Yeah, big dubs. All right, we got week 9 Cowboys at home.
Jesus. Oh man,
That's not an easy game.
It's not.
It's not an easy game. It's not an easy game because just when I got on, you guys were talking about the Saints, falling off and taking a step back. And, part of me kind of sort of feels, is this the season that it happens to Dallas, where Dallas is not the juggernaut that we kind of sort of expect them to be, at least in the regular season. Last 3 years, they've won, 12 games?
Yeah.
And I don't think, me personally, I wouldn't be surprised if they fall back 2 or 3 games maybe, because they haven't really. Where have they improved?
Right. I think they're according to
better.
I think according to the sports, what are some of the sports books I was looking at, I think they're the team with the biggest projected drop in scoring this year. So I mean, you're absolutely onto something, that they lost a lot. They haven't really added a lot. So it's kind of an interesting situation they find themselves in.
Yeah, and now you're going into the season, and depending on how it plays out, you're going into the season with your owner probably not committing to your starting quarterback long term. Your number 1 receiver maybe not getting the deal that he wants yet. Your head coach possibly sitting on the hot seat. There's a lot going against Dallas right now. I'm going to give Atlanta the win here. I think Atlanta beats Dallas at home. And to be quite honest with you, even given the talent that Dallas has, I would not be surprised if this is a double-digit win.
Yeah, no. So you were officially taking the Falcons or the Cowboys there?
The
Sorry.
Falcons. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, you got Eric. We're the haters instead of Eric. I mean, we all picked losses, so we're the haters now. So
where am I at in terms of record? Catch me up real quick, please.
Yeah, so you are at 6-3 through 9 games.
That's fine. I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not unreasonable. I don't think that's unreasonable.
No, that's not bad at all.
It's definitely a rosy start, but it's not unreasonable. Right. I mean, it's not like you're like, oh yeah, they're winning 9 games. They're gonna be 9-0. All right, we got to get caught up with us. It's now week 10 at the Saints.
Win.
All right.
I'm not a believer in the Saints at all this year.
No, like I was saying, yeah, I think they're gonna be bad.
I think last year they were old. It showed. I think a lot of lot of Saints fans are not ready to come to that reality yet, but it's here. I'm sorry, it's here. I can't see the Saints winning more than 8 games this year, to be quite honest. So, dub for the Falcons.
All right, so I guess it's just Dave and I that are the giant haters now. All right, now we got week 11 at the Broncos is the final game before the bye. So yeah, Adnan, what do you think about this one? Going to face Sean Payton in Denver.
This is one of those games where the Falcons should win this game by 20.
Yeah.
Like the Broncos suck. Well, let's be honest. Like the Broncos are in a very big rebuild mode. They're probably going to be starting Bo Nix at this point. They don't really have a pass rush. Pat Surtain is really, really good. Don't get me wrong, but beyond him, there's not too much talent on defense. Cortland Sutton is fine, but this is good. This is one of those games where this has all the makings of a trap game, in my opinion, just because you're going to be coming off of a highly emotional game in New Orleans, which it always is. I feel like the players will be, I hope that this isn't a case, but I can easily see a scenario where the players are looking forward toward the bye week. It's a late bye week in week 12. And you're going to have to travel the most west that you will all season long over to Denver. And I can easily see the Falcons overlooking what should be a Broncos team with a very, very bad record. And I'm very scared that it'll be a scenario the way that we saw in, I think, 2018 when they went to Cleveland. And, we all expected them to go and run all over Cleveland and it just beat the shit out of, the lowly Browns. And then the opposite happened. I will pick the Falcons here just because I think the talent difference is too huge. But I think this is one of those games that will come down. It'll be a lot closer than what we expect.
Yeah, I could see that just because going to Denver to play is hard. The altitude is something that teams have to get used to. I hope that they will go like several days early to get acclimated. I think a lot of teams try to do that. I think that does help, but it's still tough. Like for those of you that in my days of living in Florida and then going to go ski, it was like it took like a couple days to like really catch your breath going from like sea level to like mile high like mountain conditions. I mean that is a factor for sure. And Denver fans are still passionate. It's hard to go win in Denver for sure. But that team is like the defense I think will still be good. But that offense it's in a bad way. And like Sean Payton didn't have any magic last year. Like that magic did not work. Like whatever magic he was trying to do, it did not work last year. So I got to take a dub here as well. Dave will also be doing a dub, but Eric, where do you land on this one? Oh, I think you might still be muted.
Yeah, here I agree with Adnan. I do think this does have the makings of a trap game. I'm gonna pick the Falcons here. However, I do feel like this could be a game where fourth quarter comes around and we're like, why is this game still close?
Yeah.
Why is this game still tight? It wouldn't surprise me because, like as you mentioned, going into Denver and playing at altitude, that's not easy. And it's really it can truly trip you up. Just ask Kansas City last year. So I'm going to take the Falcons here, but I would not be surprised if it's a one-score game. To be quite honest with you.
No,
I think Raheem Morris will sort of make his money here as a motivator. He'll have to prove his mettle as a motivator just because, it's human nature, right? Like it's a long season, and I do think that this game being sandwiched in between at New Orleans and the bye week is just, and then having to travel out west as well. Well, not the West Coast, but out west to Denver. It will be on the coaching staff to sort of get these guys up and to, make them just to sort of push them over that hump of, all right, let's just do a little bit more, and then we can all take our week off, and then we can rest, replenish for this final run before the playoffs. So this is where Raheem Morris will really be as important as ever, as in any other game.
Yeah, I think this could be one of those games like Adnan was saying that I could easily I can't predict this as a loss because the Falcons shouldn't lose this game, but I could see this being like the Falcons get a surprise win, like they beat the Cowboys, like Eric was suggesting, or like the Saints really are awful and they sweep the Saints, and then they just like stupidly lose this game instead, or something like that. Like I could see that happening too, but they really should beat the Broncos. I'm just not that concerned about this one. Other than the on-field stuff of like you got to go to Denver, it's right before the bye week. Other than that, I think that they got a good shot in this one. So our bye week check-in, I've got the Falcons. I'm the biggest hater. I've got the Falcons at 5-6 going into the bye. Adnan has the Falcons at 7-4. Eric has the Falcons at 8-3, and Dave has them at 6-5. So that's our bye week check-in. Week 13, we got the Chargers. And this one, I think, is kind of a wild card game because I don't think we know how good the Chargers are going to be. I think we should probably expect Harbaugh to get this team going better than they were the year before. They have Justin Herbert, so I wouldn't be shocked if we get to this game because right now on paper, it looks like the Falcons should win this game. They're at home. The Chargers got to make a trip across country. It's coming off a bye week. This is all lining up to be a game that the Falcons should win, but the Chargers could actually be a really good team. They obviously have a long way to go on defense, but offensively, they could be on the right track and pretty dangerous. I'm still going to predict a win here. I think based on what we know, I think the Falcons are going to win this game. Dave has the Falcons losing this one. Eric, what do you think about the Chargers in Week 13?
I'm with Dave here. I'm taking the Chargers. I do think not having Keenan Allen and Mike Williams in that offense is going to be something to keep an eye on. But I did love the hire of Jim Harbaugh. I mean, that guy's a winner. He wins everywhere he goes. And, you still have number 10. Justin Herbert, in my opinion, is a top 5 quarterback to me in terms of skill set. And he's still dangerous regardless of what type of weapons he has out there. It is going to be interesting to see how their defense looks. And it's quite obvious they're going to, they're running it back with Khalil Mack and Bosa and Derwin and those guys. So I'm going to give the Chargers the win here. I think they do the same thing that they did to us a couple years ago where they just came into Atlanta and stole a win from us.
Yeah, it certainly could be the case.
Yeah.
Adnan, how do you feel about this one?
If this was in a vacuum and, if all else was equal, then I would probably be more inclined toward leaning to the Chargers, especially given the fact that this will be Week 13, and just like how the Falcons have a new coaching staff, which we, hope and predict will be in a rhythm, I think, Jim Harbaugh will be in a bit of a rhythm as well. I think he's going to give Justin Herbert the best defense that he's ever had in his career. Not that that's a very high bar because Brandon Staley was terrible over there. But I think this is a scheduling nightmare for the Chargers, this game in Week 13. The Falcons are coming off of a bye week, so obviously, they have the extra time to prepare. On LA's side, they are not only not coming off of a bye week, but they're coming off of a Monday Night Football game in Baltimore. So, they will, they have one of the toughest games on their schedule, which will probably be a highly emotional game against the Baltimore Ravens. And that game is actually, hold on, let me look it up here. No, that game is at home against Baltimore. My mistake. But that, I think, is just as bad because now you have 6 days in between that Ravens game and Atlanta. And in that 6 days, they also have to fly cross-country from Los Angeles to Atlanta on shorter rest than usual to face a Falcons team on the road, which is coming off of an extra week of preparation. And I think I think that's enough to tip the scales toward Atlanta's favor. in a matchup of two teams, which I think would be more evenly matched, two of the more evenly matched teams in the NFL. But I think the circumstances are just way too much in Atlanta's favor from the scheduling perspective for the Falcons to lose this game. So I'm gonna go with a victory coming off the bye.
Okay. We got week 14 at the Vikings. This one is the Kirk Cousins revenge game, right? Or the Vikings revenge game, depending on which side of that you're on. And yeah, I mean, I just think the Vikings are kind of an interesting team, right? I mean, they're starting over at quarterback. There's a lot of buzz that Sam Darnold's going to be their starter for the beginning of the year, maybe even most of the year, which is interesting. But even if it's JJ McCarthy, you know, they're not exactly. This is not the Vikings of yesteryear where they're rolling out Kirk Cousins and they're going to be one of the best passing attacks in the NFL. They still, of course, have Justin Jefferson, who just became the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. They've still got Jordan Addison. You know, by this time, I'm expecting their tight end to be healthy. You know, I know he may not be 100% still. You know, we'll see when he comes back. But this is one that I think the Falcons should win. I obviously going to Minnesota is not easy, but it's not a huge road trip for the Falcons. And again, they just had their bye in week 12, and they were at home in week 13, so they're probably still going to be in a pretty good way in terms of rest. So I think this is one that they have a good chance to win. Dave does have the Falcons losing this one. Eric, I'm curious where you stand on going on the road to play the Vikings in week 14.
Man, this is a tough one because in recent seasons, the Vikings have had their number, man. We last year's game, I was, in my opinion, the worst loss of the season.
Yeah.
They definitely should have won that game, especially given the circumstances. But the fact that they lost that game on a Josh Dobbs game-winning drive, it still rubs me the wrong way. And they did that without Justin Jefferson being out there. Man, this is a tough one. I'll say this would definitely be a nail biter. I think both teams will come out swinging. Having Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, that combination that's a dangerous combination. You add Aaron Jones and TJ Hawkinson, that should be a decent offense at the very least, even given who may start at the quarterback spot. I'm gonna go with the Falcons here, but I'll be honest, I'm not 100% convinced.
Yeah,
because again, it's just in recent years, the Vikings have found ways to beat us, and in whatever capacity. I think they're still trying to make up for 1998, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, they
so
could
yeah,
be.
so I'll take the Falcons here, but I'm not 100% behind it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, this is like, to me, and my head canon for this season. I think the Falcons are sort of, after the bye week, they're kind of just like hitting their stride. I think they'll be kind of erratic the first 11 weeks, which is why I have them going to the bye with a losing record. But I think they're going to hit their stride after the bye and kind of solidify themselves as an NFC contender by the time we get to the end of the season. You'll have to see what their final record is. But yeah, I'm curious, Adnan, how you feel about this week 14 game.
I'm with Dave on this one. I have this down as a loss, a more frustrating loss, but at the end of the day, I think I will be able to understand it, just because it'll be a highly emotional game in Minnesota. It'll be Kirk Cousins' homecoming. That's a team that sort of knows Kirk Cousins very, very well. They know Kirk Cousins intimately. So I do think that as much as Kirk Cousins will want to prove a point and will want to go out there and have the game of his life, and maybe he will. Maybe he'll go out there and just prove to with a chip on his shoulder and prove to Minnesota they should have given him that guaranteed money into year 3 that the Falcons did, and hopefully that is the case. But it goes both ways, right? They're going to have a defensive game plan for him and for the Falcons, and then on offense, whether it's Darnold or McCarthy, whoever it is that's starting a quarterback, I don't think the Falcons have anyone. Well, I don't think anyone in the league has anyone that can really keep up with Justin Jefferson. I think that is the best wide receiver on the planet. He is very deservedly now the highest paid wide receiver on the planet. We'll see, we'll see what happens with CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase, if that remains the case going into the season. But yeah, Aaron Jones, still a very good running back despite some of the injury issues. TJ Hawkinson, the Falcons haven't been able to cover tight ends. The Falcons still can't cover tight ends. As far as I can remember, they can't cover tight ends. But Hawkinson should be, playing by this point. We'll see if he's at 100%, but it is late in the season, so that does bode better for him and for the Vikings. I think this will be a very close loss and a very emotional game.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So that's a contentious one as well. We got week 15 at the Raiders. And this one, I think the Raiders, I think, are going to be better than they were last year. I think they're probably just like a slightly below 500 team. I think they'll have better coaching, but I think like when you've got Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew as your starting quarterback options, it's just your ceiling is capped. I just don't. And you're in one of the toughest divisions in football. I think by this time they're probably going to be pretty well beaten out of the division race, and it'll be sort of setting in that they need to get a quarterback. But I think that's the intention for the Raiders. I think they would like to lose and be in position to get a top quarterback next year, now that they've been able to amass some talent around the quarterback position. So we'll see how that goes. But I think this is definitely going to be a win. And Dave agrees with me there. What do you think about this one, Adnan?
Yeah, I think this is a dub. I think the Falcons will get up for it too, just given the fact that it's a Monday Night Football game. Well, if it doesn't get flexed out, it's a game in Las Vegas. This is the first time that they're going to Las Vegas to play. I think the Falcons fan base will travel out in good numbers. The way that I imagine any fan base will travel out to Las Vegas. So I'm sure it'll be a fun time for the Falcons fans that are making the trip out there. But yeah, the Raiders, you're right. The Raiders could outright be tanking at this point. And even if they're not, you have Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew, not exactly a murderer's row quarterback there. At running back, Zamir White, go Dogs, but he's not exactly a murderer's row running back. Devontae Adams is still very good, but who's getting him the ball? I think this should be a very comfortable victory for the Falcons.
Yeah. And Eric, are you thinking the same thing here this week? It's going to be dubs all the way down.
I think the Falcons trip up here, guys.
Okay.
I go back to last year. Remember Christmas Day? The Raiders went on the road and they beat the Chiefs. Didn't even score an offensive touchdown. Antonio Pierce, he found a way to kind of sort of get them up for that particular game, even though their season looked a little lost at that point. If you go back to the previous week before that as well, they had a home game on Thursday night against the Chargers, and they put up 63 points. Another game where there really wasn't a ton to play for, but they went out and they played hard for 4 quarters because of their coach. And I think those 2 particular games kind of sort of sealed the deal for Antonio Pierce as the head coach. I think this is another game here where he finds a way to get them up for it. It's Monday night. I don't know how many primetime games they have, but I saw enough from him last year to know that he can be a great motivator for that team. And he can kind of sort of flip the switch for him. So I'm going to give the Raiders the win here. I think the Falcons kind of sort of go on the road. They trip up here late in the season. It's not a devastating loss, but it's at least is one of those losses that they have that the Falcons they have every year where it's like, why the hell did they lose this game in particular? I think this is that one. So the Raiders, I'm going to give them the nod here.
Okay. So yeah, we haven't had an agreement on a game since week 11 beating the Broncos now. So they're definitely getting into some interesting stuff here. We got week 16, just 3 games left. Week 16 against the Giants. I think this is another one that's going to be a win for the Falcons. It's at home. And I think the Giants are just they're just not good enough, in my opinion. Malik Neighbors is good, but they just don't have a quarterback. I think Daniel Jones can't be trusted. I think this team is also another one that might be sort of like low key tanking. I mean, we'll see how their offensive line adjusts. We'll see how that defense adjusts. This team has just not been very good, and this is kind of a must-win season for them, or they're probably going to clean house. So it's not that they're tanking, but it's like I wonder if they've changed if they've already fired their head coach at this point. We'll see. But the Giants have consistently been an enigma. So they were way better than expected 2 years ago. Then last year they were way worse than expected. This year, we'll see what happens. The Giants are kind of one of those crazy teams. But Dave has this as a win as well. Eric, what do you think about this week 16 game?
Yeah, I think this is the game where the Falcons get that bad taste out of their mouth from losing to the Raiders the week prior. And I think they come back and they take care of the Giants here in a convincing fashion.
Yeah, I agree with that. Adnan, you feeling some of the same way here?
Yeah, I just don't think the Giants are a very good football team. Their offense was so heavily reliant on Saquon Barkley the last couple of years. He's not there anymore. I really like Malik Neighbors, but I think there's only so much a rookie can do. Not a big Daniel Jones believer. Wan'Dale Robinson, I'm sure, I hope is going to be better. I started a dynasty league, and I took Wan'Dale Robinson in my startup, so I hope he's really good.
I know Eric's team Wan'Dale all the way. So
yeah. 21st round, so that'll be a boon if Wan'Dale Robinson is good. But that's
like my Puka pick last year. Yeah,
that's me being selfish here. Yeah, took Puka in the third.
We could have had a pair of Robinsons on the team,
right? That would have been the secret. Yeah. Now I'm sure that Wan'Dale would never have played here. They would have converted him to running back. So giving Bijan even fewer carries. Yeah,
we're rooting for you, Wan'Dale. But yeah, Darren Waller likely going to retire the next week. Also, yeah. So that's another playmaker that they're going to lose. So yeah, I think the Falcons should win this game handily.
Yeah, I think so too. And all right, week 17 at the Commanders. This is one that I think this is because I had them winning 4 straight going into this. I think this is one that they should win, but I think the Commanders just seem to always beat the Falcons. It doesn't really. It's always it's always crazy. It's always ugly. It's always just some random thing that happens, but they always lose. I have this as a loss just because of the Commanders' laziness, but maybe they break the streak here. Maybe they do. Get ahead. It wouldn't shock me if they end up winning this one and improving their final record just because they don't succumb to that weird loss to the Commanders. But I can't. They're gonna have to prove it to me because I don't believe it. But Adnan, what do you think about this Commanders game?
Yeah, I think this is we have that one infuriating loss every year. I have this one as that infuriating loss. And I think we really will be furious because at this point, if we are correct, the Falcons will be fighting for seeding and could maybe even be fighting for the 1 seed, which if they are, then hopefully they don't lose this game. But I can easily see the Falcons going to Washington. As much as he won't say anything, I'm pretty sure Dan Quinn, will always have something to prove against the Falcons. It's a year 1 Dan Quinn team too, so the message will not be stale at all. We'll be talking about fast and physical, the brotherhood down there. And I think that team will be motivated and they will be fighting week in and week out. Jaden Daniels, we all really like Jaden Daniels, and I think the Falcons will have a very hard time dealing with Jaden Daniels' ability to escape the pocket. Brian Robinson has had very good games against the Falcons in the past. Terry McLaurin is an incredibly underrated wide receiver. I'm with you. This is the coldest game the Falcons will have to play. It'll be near January. They have to travel up to Washington. They'll have a day. I think this will be one of those days where the Falcons just come away with a loss, and we all are very, very upset about it.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that for sure. Eric, are you sort of feeling the same way about this one?
I'm the opposite, man.
Oh, okay.
I think there's I agree with Adnan when he says that Dan Quinn, may have a chip on his shoulder, may have something to prove here. But I feel Kirk Cousins and Raheem Morris are in that same boat as well. Kirk Cousins going up against a franchise that, drafted him, but moved on from him at some point. And I still think he may kind of sort of keep that chip still hanging over his shoulder. Raheem Morris also is going up against, a guy that he coached with, that he coached under as well. And I think he may have something to prove. And remember, Raheem was also a member of the Washington organization at one point as well. So I think this was always a game I circled even before the schedule came out. When we found out that we were going to play them in 2024, this was one game that I circled where I felt like, man, this is going to be a game where whoever wins, it's going to mean a lot. It's going to mean more than a lot of people think. And I'm taking the Falcons here. I agree with you, Kevin. In recent years, they found ways to trip up against Commanders teams that were not that good somehow, some way. I don't know why. I don't know how. It's always confusing. But I think they turn the tide this particular year. I think they go into Washington and I think they get a convincing victory because I think Raheem Morris and Kirk Cousins want this more than anything, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that would be nice, right? Where we see, I think this could be a turning point game where like this determines whether this team is in contention for like a top seed or they're more like, I think they're probably going to comfortably win the NFC South. That's just my opinion. Like I think the Bucs will probably be like an 8-win team. I think the Saints and the Panthers are probably both going to be under like 6 or less wins. So like the Falcons don't even necessarily like I'm gonna have the Falcons at 5-6 going into week 12, and they might be like leading the division at that point, like still with a losing record. So like by the time they get here to this game, they'll have a winning record. They might have already like locked up the division going into week 17 if this division is as bad as we think. But I think I agree with what Eric's saying that they want to win this game. Like they want to. Like Raheem Morris wants to come in here and start reversing some of these like concerning trends of the past. Like, why can't we beat this Commanders team even though they're not good? Why can't we sweep the Saints? Like all these things. So this could be one of those things that Morris is like, we're changing our tune. We're not going to be that team anymore. And that could be a big turning point for how their season goes because I think if they get this win, that could really vault them up in the win column. So all right, and Dave has them winning this one as well. Just FYI. And then we get to the final game, which is probably going to be pretty anticlimactic. I honestly wonder if the Falcons will play starters here, if they've already locked up the division. If they're in contention for the number 1 seed, obviously, or the number 2 seed even, that they'll probably be going for, they'll probably put the starters in. But even if they don't play the starters, I think they have a chance of winning this game. Against the Panthers at home in week 18. We'll see where the Panthers are at. They could be better than expected. You never know. But at this time, all I can do is look at what the Panthers have done, and I think they've gotten better, but this Panthers team is probably multiple years away. And I think it's a lot for Dave, Dave Canales to be able to do a whole lot here. So I'm getting a win here. Dave has a win here. Eric, you thinking a win here as well? I mean, maybe you're predicting that they'll have benched their starters, and that'll be why it's a loss.
I think so. There's 2 things that I think will occur in this game. I do think they will bench a number of starters, and I also think Michael Penix gets his first start.
That'd be cool. I like that. I like that. It'll be just like Patrick Mahomes. He'll just get that start at the final game. Yeah.
But I think didn't the Chiefs won that game, didn't they?
Yes, they did. I think. Yeah.
I don't think the Falcons win this one. I think this is a game where, yes, we see we see the future in Penix, but we also kind of sort of just, take it for a grain of salt because we know that a number of starters are sitting in this one as well. But I'm going to give the Panthers the win here just to close the season. But that's only because, again, a number of starters are sitting. The Falcons have a seed locked up, have the division locked up, and I think Raheem Morris plays it smart here and not risk having his team hobble going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm gonna mark yours as like an asterisk L, where you're saying you're expecting them to have benched the starters.
Yes. Yes,
So I'll mark that
absolutely.
down officially just for clarification that you think if they needed to win this game that they would probably win. So
We need to tweet that without context.
yeah, just without
Robinson
Eric Robinson,
Falcons.
biggest
Jesus
Falcons hater
Christ.
That's gonna be a great
Oh my
thumbnail for this
God.
video. Yeah. No, we don't do that here. But yeah, no, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, and then like put in the thumbnail just like a picture of Desmond Ritter throwing that interception.
Yeah.
Uh,
Marcus Mariota on his back, you know.
yeah, I'm gonna go with the win just because I don't think the Falcons will have locked. I think the Falcons will still be playing for some sort of seeding.
I can
Now
see that.
obviously I don't know what seeding that will be. I can't begin to predict that. It's just more likely than not mathematically that they will be within a game, either a game up or a game back of another one of the division winners. So I think they will be fighting for some seeding. They will play the starters, even though I do think it would be cool for Michael Penix to start in that last home game. And yeah, I think they beat the Panthers. They sweep the Panthers and they finish the season. Oh shit! I think I picked them to sweep the division completely now. Well, I may have to reevaluate that actually.
No, no takesies backsies now,
Yeah,
but yeah, I believe that is the case.
that's too
6-0,
late.
and
Yeah,
I mean
also
this.
wanted to.
Oh,
I also
wow.
wanted to avoid that as well. So
Yeah.
kind of sort of helped me get this.
There you
pick.
go. Yeah. No, that's. I mean, if you're gonna sweep the division, this is probably the year to do it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so, I mean, I wouldn't be mad about that. Probably not gonna happen again anytime soon, even if this team gets better. But, yeah, So yeah, there we have it. We've got. All right, we'll go down the line here. I have the Falcons finishing 10-7. Adnan has the Falcons finishing 11-6. Eric has the Falcons finishing 11-6, and Dave has the Falcons finishing 10-7. So we're all within a game of each other. You know, we all definitely took different ways of getting there, which I think is fascinating.
It worked itself out, right?
Yeah. It's interesting because we all had a very different way of getting there. I had like a 4-game losing streak because I'm just a masochist. I'm like, yeah, I'm probably going to be really pissed off. I'm just like imagining that. And then I'll refer back to this during the season, be like, no, it's okay, guys. I predicted this. They're going to be fine. They're going to win 5 in a row after this, you know. And if they do that, then everything will be fine. But But yeah, if they get to double-digit wins, no matter how they do it, I think we'll all be pretty happy. And to be fair, a lot of, I know a lot of the games that you guys had them losing, some of them were like out-of-conference games, like at the Raiders or that sort of thing. So, and also like losing against the Chiefs, like in week 3, it's like, oh, that sucks to like lose a game that early in the season, but it's out of conference, so it really doesn't matter a whole lot in terms of tiebreakers. So, I think this is, I know a lot of people are like, oh yeah, well, this team's going to win like 12 plus games and all this. I think I would pump the brakes on that just because, again, guys, like it's a new coaching staff, not entirely, but it's a new offensive scheme. Certainly it's going to be a break-in period, which is why I think I have them starting slower than everybody else. I just think there's going to be some growing pains, but I do think this team will sort of hit their stride. After the bye, I have them winning 5 of 6 to close out the season. I think pretty much all have them with a winning record the final stretch, except for Eric, but technically that's an asterisk, and he has them going 500, and it would be a win if they were playing for something and not benching their starter. So we'll just say we all basically have them doing really well after the bye and finishing strong. But yeah, I think we'd all be pretty happy if they get to double-digit wins in the first year of this new regime, even if it's not the prettiest. I think we'd all be pretty happy with this. What do you think about this outlook, Adnan?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's sort of just going game by game, just highlights the importance of that early season stretch where, you look at it, it is intimidating at Philly versus Kansas City, and then those division games against New Orleans and Tampa Bay where, if the team comes out of that above 500, then you can expect this to be a very, very good season if they don't falcon it up, down the stretch, which is, in fairness, what they did last season. But basically, it's you just have to get through that rough patch in September and early October, and that there's a lot of reprieve, there's a lot of light at the end of the tunnel because the end of the post bye week schedule looks very, very manageable, and yeah, you sort of look at it like, man, like this team has a chance to rattle off, this team can rattle off some serious wins just given how light the schedule sort of looks. And, you know, 10, 11 wins will absolutely win the division. It'll give you a home playoff game. And, if you win that game, then who knows where you can get to.
Yeah. I think that makes total sense. Eric, what's your thoughts now that we've had a chance to look over this whole schedule?
Yeah, I really do think double digit wins is very possible for this team this year. Maybe not, to the level of 12, but I think 10 or 11 is definitely a comfortable area there. They're definitely going to be an improved team on both sides of the ball, in my opinion. Now, how much improvement will we see? That remains to be seen. There's still some question marks on defense, especially in the secondary opposite AJ Terrell, along the defensive line. Like, who's going to kind of sort of take that mantle as the lead edge rusher and be the guy? Doesn't necessarily have to be at all pro level, but who's going to be the guy that kind of sort of leads the charge a little bit there? I'm a believer in Raheem Morris. I think he's instilling in them slowly but surely that they are definitely much better and much more talented than what the record showed over the last few years. You're starting to see a number of guys, even just in the little shots that we've seen of OTAs and mini camps. Like, you're starting to see a different Kyle Pitts when it comes to the route running and things of that nature. You're starting to see a different Drake London. They're getting Bijan Robinson back healthy after his little ankle injury early in the offseason. But I think this is a team that as the offseason goes on, the confidence continues to grow. And I think that's going to be a catalyst for them going into the season early. We all kind of sort of felt like they were going to have somewhat of a rough start with the first 3 games, given the opponents. But we also felt those games, especially against Philly and Kansas City, would be closer than a lot of people think. So I do think this team is a playoff team for sure. I think this team is going to win the division this year. I think this team is going to really turn some heads. And then, once like Raheem Morris said in his opening meeting with the team, you get in the playoffs, anything can happen. So
Yeah.
I truly think this team is going to turn some heads this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think it could be a bit of a rough start, and that's my prediction, at least, especially like you guys said, that first 3-game stretch. It wouldn't shock me if they start 0-3, but I think the reason to not panic about that, like if they're competitive and they just like lose 3 like nail biters against a tough opening stretch, I'm probably going to be telling people not to panic. And the reason for that is the division's bad, right? And they've got a soft finish, right? So they could go down a few games because the division as a whole might be like have 1 win between the whole division after 3 weeks or something like that. So it's like, oh, you're 0-3, but you're only 1 game back in the division. It's not a big deal. The Falcons are kind of in a unique situation where maybe it's not as big a deal. They probably only need to get to 10 wins to win this division. This isn't the NFC, this isn't the AFC West, where you need to get to 13 wins to get past Kansas City or you're just shit out of luck. So, I do think that, they'll have an opportunity to sort of overcome what's likely to be a little bit of a rough start, and finish strong and hopefully go into the playoffs feeling pretty good, like similar to 2016. Like, this offense is starting to hum, things are coming together. The young players are stepping up. We're feeling good about this team going into the playoffs instead of like, the team sort of kind of limping into the playoffs like they would have been the last couple of years, even if they did make it in like a bad NFC South. Like, I think this year they'll win 10 games and we'll feel like 10 or 11 games and we'll feel good about it, as opposed to like last year. If they won 10 games, I think we all would have, and they could have easily done it, right? I mean, they were not that far off of it. Like, a couple balls bounced differently, maybe some things that were fumbles get called fumbles correctly, whatever. They probably win 8, 9, 10 games, and then, but like, do we feel good about that team in the playoffs? No, not at all. So, we'll see how it all pans out. But I appreciate everyone for coming on. Thanks to Eric. He's at _Eric_Robinson. Thanks to Adnan. He's at Say Which Way. Thanks to Dave Cho at the Falcoholic for sending in his predictions, even though he's not feeling so hot. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate you. Eric, anything that you're working on you want to let the people know about before we sign off tonight?
Not at all, man. As always, I want to give this opportunity for the Falcoholic to shine. Of course, you guys are really putting out great content consistently, of course. And as I always say, man, the Falcoholic is the one-stop shop for everything you need to know Atlanta Falcons.
Absolutely. We appreciate you coming on again, buddy. Thank you so much. We've also, of course, got with us Adnan Ikic, my co-host at Say Which Way. Adnan, anything you're working on, like, let the people know about?
I'm also gonna echo Eric and plug the Falcoholic. It is a dead period, but we're trying to figure out some stories, and we're trying to publish some things just to keep our heads above water a little bit. And I will plug the show as well, even though it's a dead period. We're still doing this every Wednesday, and we'll probably have some tampering news coming out in the coming days too. So stick with us for that too.
Yes, hopefully very minor tampering news. But hopefully it'll be not a big deal, guys. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic. Kevin, thanks again.
We would have heard something by now, though.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, Kirk Cousins insists that nothing bad happened. He was like, "Look, I said it because I didn't think anything was wrong. Like, it was so innocent. So maybe it is a big nothing burger. I mean, who knows? But I'm thinking 3rd round pick. Hopefully that's it. Hopefully it's less. I hope not, for the record. But I mean, I kind of don't think that it's just what Kirk said. Otherwise, they probably would have just been like, "Oh yeah, that's fine, whatever." Like, I kind of don't think it's just that, but I guess we could be wrong. Maybe it is just that. If it's just that, yeah.
It has felt like the investigation has gone a little longer than expected. So I can understand why you would feel that way, where you think it could be more besides who Kirk talked to or whatever. So
yeah. So if it's more than that, that's why I'm thinking a 3rd. Like, I think there's probably something else in there, but I mean, we'll see, right? There's no point us predicting. We don't have any of the information. Nobody does. Nobody's talking. So we'll see if we hear anything over the next couple of days. I think we will. So hopefully the saga will be over soon. I don't think it's going to be like some people are like, "Oh, it's going to be a 1st round pick." I seriously doubt that. I really would be completely floored if it was, and it would mean that there was some like huge conspiracy basically that they were a part of. Because remember, when the Dolphins lost their 1st round pick, their owner was like trying to recruit Tom Brady when he was actively playing for another team, and like tried to recruit a coach that was under contract with another team for years. For years. I don't think it's to that level. I would be completely like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I just can't believe that happened. But we'll see. You never know. So yeah, well, we'll see how that goes. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Like I said, please check out the Patreon, the channel membership on YouTube. Also, if you guys are interested, we're going to be starting up the Patron Fantasy Leagues next month. So you can sign up anytime between now and then to get in on those. We'll probably try to have those once again, probably like the week or two before the season starts. So you got plenty of time, but if you want to support us anyway, you can sign up whenever you're ready. All tiers get access to that. Thanks to everyone that's already signed up. We're looking forward to playing with you guys again. Of course, like, subscribe here on YouTube, leave that 5-star review in your podcast platform of choice. And thanks so much to everyone for joining us here in the Dead Zone. We got one more little tidbit here with mandatory minicamp, and then it's going to be absolutely nothing until training camp. So it'll be an interesting dead period, as it always is, but we'll be here for you to talk about something. We'll make it interesting, I promise, in the meantime. But thanks again, guys, for joining us here on the Falcoholic Live. We'll see you next time. Have a great night, folks.